Racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Did you know that Steve McQueen once turned down a studio paycheck just so he could keep a stunt Mustang from Bullitt? That's the kind of car guy we're talking about today. Someone who didn't just drive cars, he lived them. McQueen wasn't collecting to impress anyone. He was curating a garage of pure unfiltered adrenaline. In today's video, we'll be exploring 15 cars from his collection that are so rare, so raw, and so McQueen that most gearheads wouldn't even dream of touching them. Buckle up, because this ride's going full throttle into legend territory. 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4. We'll start things off with a true fire breather, the 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 that tore through Hollywood like a V12 Hurricane. Before this, Steve McQueen had already dipped his toes into Ferrari territory, but this one was different. After his super rare 275 GTS4 NART Spider got rear-ended at a stoplight in Malibu, McQueen didn't throw a fit. Nope, he marched straight into the dealership and said, "Give me that one." That one happened to be this 275 GTB4 with chassis number 10621. Originally finished in a hazelnut color with Nero leather, Nocciola for the purists, but McQueen took one look and said, nah. He immediately handed it over to his custom car guy, Lee Brown, the same genius who helped tweak the Mustang GT390 for Bullitt. Lee gave the Ferrari a total makeover, slapping on a deep, bold Chianti red coat. He didn't stop there. He snagged the Barani wire wheels and side view mirror off his wrecked NIRT Spider and gave this GTB a more aggressive, personalized edge. This thing had a 3.3-liter V12 under the hood, pushing 300 horsepower. That's 160 miles per hour of no-nonsense Italian rage. Sleek, long nose, low-slung presence. Rear-wheel drive and a soundtrack that could raise the dead. Even though he only owned it for 4 years, it became one of his most iconic rides, part of a collection that spanned over 100 cars. When McQueen sold it in 1971 to fellow actor Guy Williams, the Ferrari went on its own adventure. It passed hands from a Los Angeles cop to trucking mogul Robert Panella. Panella, not a fan of roofs, turned it into a Spider through custom work by Robert Strayman. Eventually, it landed with Vern Schuppan, Le Mans legend and Porsche factory driver, who decided to give it back its original Berlinetta glory. Before we jump into the next iconic car, make sure to hit that like button if you've ever dreamed of tearing down a highway in something vintage and loud. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications for more legendary car content just like this. 1961 Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta Lusso. Steve didn't buy the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta Lusso himself. His first wife, Neely Adams, gifted it to him back in '63. It was sleek, suave, and elegant. Designed by Pininfarina, body built by Carrozzeria Scaglietti, it had curves smoother than a jazz sax solo, wide hips, sloped fastback, an interior wrapped in fine leather. It had an aluminum hood, trunk, and doors to save weight. It did not need help. That 3-liter V12 pumping out 240 horsepower, topping out at 150 miles per hour, was a grand tourer that could hustle. The Lusso was often his daily driver, rolling through LA with the windows down, maybe some jazz or soul on the stereo, and all eyes on him. Only 351 of these were ever made, and McQueen's had chassis number 4891. Though not built for racing, it is fast enough to embarrass a lot of so-called sports cars. A car that proved you didn't need to scream to get attention, you just needed to show up. After McQueen let it go, the car floated through a few hands before it found itself with Mike Regalia in 1997. Regalia, a restoration mastermind, spent over 4,000 hours lovingly bringing the car back to life. He sold it through Christie's in 2007 for over $2.3 million, and that was almost 2 decades ago. Today, this Ferrari isn't just a collector's item, it's art. You've only seen 2 of the machines McQueen had in his legendary lineup. We're just getting warmed up. So if these Ferraris got your blood pumping and your wallet twitching, you better stick around, because the next ones, they'll knock your driving gloves right off. 1968 Ford Mustang GT390. The 1968 Ford Mustang GT390 is the most famous Mustang to ever burn rubber on screen. You know the one, Highland green paint, San Francisco hills, and Steve McQueen behind the wheel like he just robbed a bank. Under that long hood sat a beast, a 390cc V8. That's 6.4 liters of American muscle thumping out 325 horsepower and a neck-snapping 427 pound-feet of torque. 4-speed manual transmission, 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, and a top speed of 130 miles per hour. Two identical fastbacks were built for the shoot. One did the heavy lifting for close-ups and survived. The other was thrashed within inches of its life, doing jump after jump. The lucky one, McQueen's main ride, got out in one piece and went into hiding like a witness in a mob trial. But here's where it gets interesting. After filming Wrapped, Steve McQueen really wanted to keep the car. I mean, he tried. He tracked it down, made an offer, and even tried to trade a different '68 Mustang plus cash. But Robert Kiernan, the guy who bought it originally in '74 for $6,000, wasn't budging. He loved that car like it was family, so McQueen had to let it go. One of the few rides that slipped through his fingers. Fast forward to 2020, Sean Kiernan, Robert's son, rolls the car, dusty, beat up, unrestored, onto the stage at Meckham Options in Kissimmee for a final hammer price of $3.74 million. You might think that's as cool as it gets, but don't get too comfortable because what's coming next is sleek, sexy, and European. 1958 Porsche 356 1600 Super Speedster. Lightweight, low slung, and powered by a 1.6 liter flat 4 engine putting out just 75 horses. Not a powerhouse, sure, but that wasn't the point. This car was about balance. It hugged corners like a hungry cat clinging to a tuna can. McQueen bought it new in late '58 from Century Motor Sales in Alhambra, California. Black on black. Optional Rudge wheels. Even had a cigarette lighter clamped to the steering column. Pure class. That was Steve's daily driver when Hollywood hadn't quite figured him out yet. He was a rising star, still grinding for roles and carving his path, on-screen and off-road. But it gets exciting. Steve didn't just cruise Sunset Boulevard with this thing, he raced it. The first outing was to Santa Barbara in May '59, the same Santa Barbara airfield where the Sports Car Club threw down a massive 48-car grid. McQueen rolled up in his Speedster and smoked the field in the novice race, won it outright. He qualified for the next day's big event, but mechanical gremlins knocked him down. Didn't matter. The fire was lit. Just weeks later, he entered a race at Hourglass Field near San Diego, finished third behind another Porsche and a Morgan. McQueen loved it enough to keep it for over a decade before letting it go. Then, years later, he got it back. Bruce Meyer, who'd bought the car from McQueen, ended up selling it back to him around 7 years later. The car stayed in the family even after Steve passed away in 1980. Today, it belongs to his son Chad, who's no stranger to keeping his father's legacy alive. Feeling the buzz yet? Stay tuned, because if you thought those rides were legendary, you ain't seen nothing yet. 1970 Porsche 911S. The slate gray 1970 Porsche 911S wasn't just another sports car tossed into his garage. It was ordered by the film's property master specifically for McQueen's use. This machine had it all. A 2.2-liter flat-six engine kicking out 200 din horsepower at 6,500 RPM. Redline at a high-revving 7,300 RPM. That horizontally opposed six-cylinder roared with a voice so raw it could raise goosebumps on your forearms. With 2,195cc tucked into a lightweight frame and paired with a 5-speed manual, it danced through French backroads like it was choreographed. The 911S was special because of its factory-installed air conditioning, a muffler apron, tinted glass, a Blaupunkt Frankfurt radio, front fog lamps with those yellow lenses the French were crazy about. Wrapped in leather inside, slicked in that signature slate gray outside, it had the kind of charisma you couldn't fake. McQueen wasn't new to the model either. He already had a 1969 911S back in California, the same color, same vibe, but instead of shipping it back and forth across the Atlantic, Porsche was more than happy to serve up their newest edition. The 1976 Porsche 911 Turbo. The 1976 Porsche 911 Turbo, better known as the 930, was the last new car that Steve McQueen had ever ordered. His final Porsche. Before intercoolers were the norm, this early production monster came packed with a 3-liter engine fed by Bosch K-Tronic fuel injection. This was the wild stallion of the Porsche stable. Raw, unpredictable, thrilling, just like Steve. However, McQueen special ordered this one in slate gray too. Noticing a theme? That color was his signature. Stoic, sleek, and powerful without yelling about it. The car came loaded with options from Bob Smith Porsche in Hollywood, such as dual mirrors, a sunroof, black sports seats, and a limited slip differential. That wasn't enough for Steve though. He added his own, the biggest being a kill switch wired into the dash that cut off the taillights, just in case he ever needed to slip away from some unwanted attention on Mulholland Drive. When Meckham rolled it onto the block, every eye in the house was locked on it. Predictions were around 1.5 to 1.6 million, tops. That's what the analysts said. But in reality, it crushed those numbers, blasting past expectations and hammering down a staggering $1.95 million. Even more touching, a portion of that auction price went to the Boys Republic, McQueen's old reform school. 1958 GMC Pickup. By now, when you think of Steve McQueen, you probably imagine the throaty roar of a Mustang from Bullitt, or maybe a Porsche flat out down the Mulsanne Straight. But let's take a hard left and talk about a truck. Yes, a truck. McQueen's 1958 GMC Pickup. We're talking about the 101 series half-tonner with a 114-inch wheelbase. Under that wide, rugged hood sat a 336 cubic inch V8 that could muscle its way through ranch territory or Beverly Hills traffic like it was born to do both. GMC called it the 101-8, and it delivered the best power-to-weight ratio in their lineup at the time. Basically, it was GMC's version of a muscle truck before that term even existed. This truck was pure Americana with a pinch of mid-century flamboyance. Big chrome grille, sweeping lines that borrowed more from 50s sedans than anything utilitarian. Sure, it looked like a ranch truck, but don't be fooled. It had McQueen's fingerprints all over it, both figuratively and literally. His wife Barbara called it Steve's baby. McQueen kept this one parked at the Beverly Wilshire, where he stashed 10 of his prized cars, but this was the one he loved the most. It wore the license plate 3188, his student ID number at the Boys Republic Reform School in Chino, California. Porsche 917K. The next machine in McQueen's orbit wasn't even technically his, but its connection to him made it absolutely untouchable. The Porsche 917K was one of the greatest race cars ever built, and McQueen burned it into cinema history with Le Mans. Underneath that now iconic Gulf livery was a monster, a flat 12 engine that cranked out enough power to make men smile. This was the car that helped Porsche dominate Le Mans in 1970 and 71. It was historic and purpose-built for endurance warfare. McQueen's Solar Productions bought chassis 917-022 straight from Porsche and had it upgraded to K-spec. We're talking about improved aerodynamics, high-speed stability fixes, and enough engineering. His character, Michael Delaney, tore across the screen in it, making the 917K a movie star. After filming, the car went to racer Reinhold Jost, who campaigned it across Europe in 1971. It grabbed a second-place finish at the GP Repubblica Vallelunga in Italy and a fourth at the Spa 1000 km in Belgium. Later on, it passed through the hands of other motorsport legends like Joe Siffert, Brian Redman, and Richard Atwood, guys who didn't just race history, they made it. Fast forward to 2000, the car rolled into RM Montgomery and shattered records with a $1.32 million sale. Just when you thought the legend couldn't grow any bigger, it entered a whole new orbit when it landed in the garage of none other than Jerry Seinfeld. And here's the twist. This car headed back to auction with Meckham, putting it on the block on January 19, 2025. Bidding for chassis 917-022 started at $25 million, but soon dropped to $15. It rallied back to $25. Ferrari 512S. Next up is the Ferrari 512S, pure-blooded Italian race car madness. Imagine a 5-liter V12 howling like an angry opera singer at 10,000 RPM, mid-mounted, pushing out around 550 horsepower. Built for the World Sports Car Championship, the 512S was a mission from Enzo Ferrari himself. In the second half of 1969, old Enzo had just sold half the company to Fiat. What did he do with the money? Built 25 of these rockets in a mad dash just to get them homologated. He needed 25 to race in Group 5, and by some miracle, Mauro Forgieri and his band of wrenches pulled it off in 3 months. The 512S came wrapped in bodywork designed by Giacomo Caliri, a guy who didn't believe in heavy things. The body was feather-light fiberglass, draped over a tubular space frame that borrowed cues from the Ferrari P4 and the 612 Can-Am. Whether it had a roof or not depended on the setup. At Le Mans, McQueen drove the long-tail aerodynamic version, a slippery Bullitt built to fly down that insane 3.7-mile Hunau Dieres straight. This thing could hit 211 miles per hour. Every inch of Le Mans was soaked in the sound of that V12, spitting thunder as it tore through the French countryside. McQueen was so committed to realism that he actually had his crew mount cameras on these cars. So while you were watching the film, what you were really seeing was raw, visceral racing history. No CGI, just guts and gasoline. The 512S went toe-to-toe with the Porsche 917, and though it didn't win Le Mans that year, it won the hearts of gearheads forever. Auctions have seen these go north of $16 million if you're lucky enough to find one at all. Mini Cooper S. Steve bought his Mini Cooper S in the late 60s. It wasn't some collector's piece back then. It was just a fun car that could rip through the streets of Hollywood like a go-kart on steroids. What really made it special was he bought it from John Cooper himself, the racing legend who turned the Mini into a motorsport missile. Now, McQueen had a Ferrari Lusso sitting pretty at the time, but when he laid eyes on this Mini at Hollywood sports cars, he had to get it. Originally green with a white roof, Steve had it resprayed metallic brown with a beige top. Subtle, classy, kind of like a well-aged whiskey in a crystal tumbler. Then came the personal touches. A single fog light up front, a wood dash that looked like it belonged in a British gentleman's club, and a recessed antenna just to keep things slick. Steve did signature. After his time with it, McQueen sold the Mini to Hollywood sports cars. It passed through a few hands until in 1990, Brown spotted it in a for sale ad and went straight to the seller. Once he confirmed it was McQueen's Mini, with the same paint, same dash, and same crazy history, he snatched it up. Today, it's still sitting pretty in its original unrestored condition. No polish, no modern upgrades, just pure McQueen. Brown says he could restore it, sure, but he loves the way it is, just like Steve probably would. Because for all the million-dollar machines he touched, sometimes the real treasure was something small, quick, and unforgettable. The 1953 Siata 208 Spider is a car so cool, so unbothered, Steve McQueen called it his little Ferrari. It wasn't a Ferrari, but McQueen yanked the original Siata badges off and slapped Ferrari emblems on like he was rewriting automotive history, and honestly, nobody argued. This Italian beauty came from a boutique brand called Siata, basically the Abarth before Abarth was cool. It was based on Fiat's Otto Vu, a sweet little 2-liter V8 with aluminum construction, twin Weber carbs, and a top speed flirting with 125 miles per hour. Doesn't sound like much today, but in 1953, that was blazing. McQueen bought his 208S in 1956, secondhand, because even the king of cool had to wait in line for a style like this. For 2 years, he ripped through California canyons in it, turning Coldwater and Mulholland into his own private racetrack. Legend has it that after selling the car, he met up with the next owner twice. First, to return a few parts he forgot to include in the sale. The second time, just to jump behind the wheel and take it for a joyride, like it still belonged to him. The car was originally priced at $4,995, ridiculously high for its time. But who cares? Only about 35 of these Spiders were ever built. Michelotti designed bodywork, aluminum panels, 4-speed manual, independent coil suspension, finned drum brakes, making it worth its price. What makes this ride even more untouchable is it's been restored, lightly upgraded, and is now the 5th most expensive Siata 208S ever sold at auction. The coupe version, the 208 CS, only 18 were made, 11 bodied by Balbo, 7 by Stabilimente Farina, but McQueen didn't want a coupe. He wanted wind in his hair, sun in his eyes, and an open cockpit to hear that V8 wail. The man had taste. Moreover, this car didn't just look fast, it had presence, it had drama. When you saw that long nose and tucked rear, you knew it was something wicked. Every detail screamed classic European design with a California soul. No wonder McQueen couldn't let it go. Even after selling it, he couldn't resist one more ride. The Baja Boot was a beast born in secret. Built in just 28 days by Vic Hickey, one of GM's top engineers, the Boot was practically a rebel child. Why? Because General Motors had a strict no racing policy, so they built it in the shadows, like a rogue military project with 4 wheels and a death wish. Imagine a tubular steel chassis, independent suspension, and a mid-mounted Chevy V8 cranking out 450 horses. The engine was installed backward to make the 4x4 system work. It's a Frankenstein's monster of a vehicle, raw, radical, and ridiculous in the best way. McQueen saw the Boot and said, "Yeah, I'll take 2. Not kidding. He literally convinced Hickey to hand over both prototypes. Then, through his company Solar Plastics, he ran those monsters in the Baja 1000 and Baja 500. It wasn't just about the race. It was about showing the world that Hollywood glam could get down and dirty. In 1969, his buddy Bud Eakins, the same guy who did the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape, piloted the Boot to victory in the Baja 500. But McQueen's personal runs were something else. Take the 1969 Baja 1000. McQueen and navigator Harold Day were in the lead. They flew that buggy 50 to 70 feet through the desert sky. But after 239 grueling miles, the transmission said, "I'm out," and exploded. Race over. Still, the image of McQueen slamming the Boot through Devil's Playground, a 1,000-mile off-road hellscape, stuck with fans. He looked like a Hollywood cowboy in a space-age dune buggy. Sunglasses, dust, sweat, and power. Lots of power. The Boot was nothing like the Volkswagens everyone else was using. This thing was loud, wild, aggressive, a rolling contradiction of power and grace. It had a turbo 400 automatic transmission, so McQueen could keep his hands on the wheel while conquering the wild. There were no fancy electronics, just steel, gas, and grit. Years later, in 1996, the boot was restored. They kept the original Baja bucket seats, another McQueen touch, custom designed for comfort and safety in the worst racing conditions imaginable. Then along came James Glickenhaus, a man with his own Hollywood ties and a love for speed. He bought the original boot at auction in 2008 and went full tribute mode. His company, Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus, now builds the Glickenhaus boot, a modern version of the original, available in 2- or 4-door trims, all-wheel drive optional, and boasting up to 650 horsepower if you go full send with the supercharger. A 51 Chevy Styleline Deluxe convertible. It's 1979, filming for The Hunter was just wrapped, and Steve McQueen's behind the wheel of a 51 Chevy Styleline Deluxe convertible, top down, wind in his hair, cruising like he owns the world. He liked it so much during filming, he bought the damn thing. That's the kind of move only McQueen could pull off. This car was practically a co-star, especially with McQueen fumbling that column-mounted 3-speed like it was his first time behind the wheel. You'd almost forget the man was a real-life race car driver. Now, this particular Chevy wasn't just movie famous. It got the real McQueen treatment. He drove it, he loved it, and then he kept it. We're talking a 92 horsepower 6-cylinder machine dressed to the nines in stainless steel and moldings, leather seats, rear fender skirts, and a flawless power-operated top. The radio was original. The stereo, swapped in during the 80s or 90s, but tastefully tucked beneath the dash without hacking into the metal. The authenticity doesn't stop there. This car came with the McQueen Certificate of Authenticity, signed by both his daughter Terry and his son Chad, sold at his estate auction back in '84 at the Imperial Palace Hotel and Casino in Vegas. It even passed through the hands of Rick Harrison, Pawn Stars Rick, who's about as picky as they come when it comes to provenance. McQueen's 1957 Chevy Bel Air convertible was built for him, customized for him, and dipped in Matador red. The Van Nuys California plant crafted it for a man who could outrun most people in his sleep. Beneath the hood, you had that sweet 283cc V8 ramjet engine with fuel injection. That's right, fuel injection in 1957. This car pumped out 250 horses with a hydraulic cam and 283 with solid lifters. The 57 Bel Air was already America's sweetheart, but in McQueen's hands, it was something else entirely. The chrome, the two-tone Matador red and India ivory paint job, the fins like rocket ships on wheels. It screamed confidence. You could spot it from a mile away and feel it in your chest before it even passed. The power top was push-button easy. You're cruising down Pacific Coast Highway, hair blown back, sun dipping low, McQueen in the driver's seat. It doesn't get much more American than that. Inside, the red and silver interior was roomy enough to haul 6 adults without ever losing its cool. Vacuum tube radio, factory clock, and every bit of 1950s swagger you could dream of. Now here's the twist. It didn't just stay with Steve. After McQueen, the car found a new home with Kent Perkins, husband of comedy legend Ruth Buzzy. Perkins loaned it to the Peterson Automotive Museum for their McQueen exhibit before eventually taking it back for himself. Sure, Ford outsold Chevy that year for the first time since 1935, but Chevy had the style, the attitude, the guts. That forward-look design with tall tail fins, vented headlights, jet-age bumperettes. GM's Chuck Jordan made sure that this Bel Air turned heads. 47,562 of these convertibles rolled out, priced at $2,510 a pop. Can't make this one less unique. This bad boy right here is probably the crown jewel. The undisputed heavyweight championship of Steve McQueen's garage was his beloved 1956 Jaguar XKSS, better known as the Green Rat. Only 16 of these things were ever built, and McQueen had chassis number 713, arguably the most famous of them all. Originally, it rolled off the line in white with a red interior, but that didn't cut it for Steve. He had it resprayed in that deep, mean British racing green, swapped the red guts for black leather, and polished up the Dunlop wheels. Legendary hot rodder Von Dutch even customized the glove box door, just to keep McQueen's stuff from flying out every time he stomped the gas. Under that sleek hood sat a 3.4-liter straight-six engine pumping out 250 horsepower. Lightweight, low-slung, and street-legal, it was basically a Jaguar D-type race car made for the open road. McQueen drove it like he stole it and got so many speeding tickets that first year alone, his license was almost yanked. Twice. There's even rumor he once talked his way out of a ticket by telling the cop his wife was in labor. That's Steve McQueen for you. Cool under pressure, even with flashing lights in the rear view. McQueen loved this car. He bought it in 1959, drove it hard, and then sold it in the early 70s when he figured it was too rare to risk on the road. But the heart wants what the heart wants, right? So in 1977, he bought it back. Couldn't let it go. He kept it till the day he died in 1980. The car's been through a couple hands since then. Famous collector Bill Hurrah had it for a time. It ended up at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, where it lives today, looking just as mean and beautiful as it did tearing up the California highways. That's it for Steve McQueen's collection. If this lineup revved your engine, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stick around for more incredible car videos. We've got plenty more stories.